King. Happy Thursday evening, everybody. And my name is Katie Lowe, and I'd like to welcome you to Rhythm Flow Radio live stream right here on Meta Facebook Live, YouTube, and Spreaker. And we have a great show lined up for you today. Listen, I'm even getting an education myself. You think that you know everything? I'm here to tell you that you don't. So today we have a special guest lined up for you. And listen, we're going to talk about a legend here. We're going to talk about a pioneer. You think that people like B.B. King and Muddy Waters and all of them, you think they are legends within their own right. But you know, it had to start somewhere. We're going to introduce you to another legend today. I tell you, Mississippi John Hurt. We're going to learn all about his story. And this is a four-part series. Today, we're going to take you through educating you about who John Hurt was. And after we educate you, part two, oh, you're going to even learn more. You might even get a chance to hear a little of Mississippi John Hurt's music. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our guests to the screen and let them introduce themselves. Hold on. And you just keep the faith. That song is about my friend Charmaine DuPont. Charmaine said you got to have faith. You got to have some kind of faith. If you don't have a lot of faith, all you got to do is have a little faith. I want you to enjoy this show today. Get yourself educated. And the more you educate yourself, hey, the more faith you will have. So, Mary Frances Hurt, introduce yourself because you know yourself better than I do.
Hello, Katie. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Frances Hurt Wright.
And tell us, Mary, about a little bit about what you do.
Well, currently, I've been an educator for the last 35 years, and I run a nonprofit organization to further the legacy of my grandfather, Mississippi John Hurt.
Okay. So, when you say you're educated, are you educated in the Chicago public school system, or are you
I
educated in the Mississippi public school system? I mean, what system are you associated with?
I'm a product of Mississippi. I was born and raised in Avalon, Mississippi. I was educated. I started my educational road at Wilkes Elementary School in Monty, Mississippi.
All right. How about that? Okay.
I,
So, go ahead.
I graduated high school at Amanda Elsie High in Greenwood, Mississippi,
Hmm.
and attended a local university, Mississippi Valley State, for 2.5 years of my college career. And
Oh,
I
you
ended
got
my,
some alumni at Valley?
yes, Delta Devil.
How about that? All right. So now you say you went to Valley for 2 years.
Yes, yes.
Okay, and where did you go after that?
I attended a university in Chicago, Roosevelt University, where I obtained my liberal arts degree,
Okay.
and I obtained my uh, a master's from National Louis University, a master's from Chicago State University in supervision and instruction,
So now,
and
did you teach school here in Chicago?
I did. I taught school in Chicago for 27 years, one of the highlight of my life, you know.
All right. All right. So, I mean, you taught in the inner city, right?
That was my dream. I taught in the inner city reading and writing strategies.
All right now. How about that? Okay, Professor Dunn, introduce yourself.
All right, my name is Down Kincaide. I'm a retired university professor and musician, a blues enthusiast, and historian, um, professional commentator tonight. Um,
Okay. Now,
formerly from Mississippi resident as well.
okay, you say you are retired,
Yes,
and you retired from where?
I retired from the University of Mississippi, but
Oh,
I taught school at Mississippi Valley State University and Kansas State University as well.
all right. So we got some heavy hitters on here tonight. Okay, Mary Frances. Mary Frances Hurt Right. Now I'm hearing Mary Frances Hurt.
That's correct.
Okay. So Mary Frances Hurt. We're talking about a legend. I mean, this is a real legend because I went back and I read up on him. So I need you to establish your relationship, even though you have the name Hurt. When I go through the dictionary, I mean through the telephone book, there are a lot of Hurts, just like
Yeah.
Smith, Jones, Lowes, Williams. Establish your relationship to Mississippi John Hurt.
Okay, I do the best I can. I am the ninth of 14 children born to his eldest son, T.C. Hurt.
So, how many children did Mississippi John Hurt have?
Daddy John had three children. He had
Okay,
two sons and one daughter.
and two sons and daughters. So, you are the daughter of one of the sons.
Yes, of his
Oh,
eldest son, T.C.
okay, all right. So now, what was John Hurt known for? What was he famous for?
Daddy John was known for being an acoustic guitar player, and I think he was best known to being self-taught,
Mhm.
and he was a pioneer in this style of this genre of thumb picking guitars.
Okay, why don't you just give us a little bit of history on your grandfather?
Um, my grandfather was the youngest of 11 children born to Isom, Hurt, and Mary Jane McCain. Um, his parents were basically they came from ex-slave, and my grandfather, my great grandfather, his Isom Hurt, um, mysteriously disappeared one day after going to work. So my grandmother, uh, my great grandmother, Mary Jane McCain, raised those 11 children uh, alone.
Wait a minute. I hear the name McCain.
Yes.
Okay, now listen. Upon reading upon your grandfather, he was born in 1863.
No, he was born in 1893.
I mean, 1893, right? I'm sorry.
That's
Now,
correct.
1893. I'm hearing this name McCain. So, therefore, your father, I mean, he was a slave. He was a sharecropper, maybe.
Um, my my great grandmother, well, is an ancestor of the late Senator John McCain. Her name was Mary Jane McCain. So his great great grandfather raised my great grandmother.
Wait a minute, you're saying John McCain,
The late Senator John McCain.
his grandmother? I,
His
want, I want to make sure I get
his
this
great
right.
grandfather
His great grandfather.
raised Mary Jane McCain.
Wow. Now, do you have is that like documented in history?
It's well, as you know, the only documentation that African Americans had in Alabama, Mississippi during that time was the family Bible, and that
Mm-hmm.
everything, birth, death, and relationship was all recorded.
Hello?
Let me turn his mic off so we won't hear his conversation. Okay. Now, so that is all recorded.
Yes, in the family Bible. I mean, it's that is our history book, and as you know, uh, those the family Bible and obituaries, all those things are sacred, as far as knowing your history is concerned, and recording the birth and death and that type thing.
Oh wow. Okay. So I want you to just, I just want you to elaborate on your grandfather, and I'm going to let you talk so that the things that I have learned, maybe you can share those things with the listening audience.
I think beside the fact that my grandfather was a renowned guitarist, I think he was a phenomenal man. I really do believe that. I was fascinated with his life and the fact that he had very little education. He had a third or fourth grade education, but he could read and write very, very well. And he was a very, um, I would say, he was a very dignified man, but yet he wasn't um, so proud that he was very humble. He was a very humble guy, and
Hmm.
I think in a real sense he was very, very courageous. I can't think of anybody that would have done what Daddy John did, and I considered it a must. Here he was, a person who was given the opportunity at a very early age to record music, something that was unheard of in his time, and he came back after the during the Great Depression,
Hmm.
and he raised his family as working various jobs to support his family on the railroads, building roads and bridges, and working on the railroad. And after a time, during the time he was rediscovered in 1963, he and his companion, Miss Jessie, had settled on this farm close to where he was born and raised, and he was working as a day-to-day a labor hand where he was watching livestock, and he was around. Daddy John was around 73 years old when he was rediscovered, and for him to leave his grandchildren, the only home that he ever knew, to go away to pursue a career at his age took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage to do that. And I'm so um, grateful for him doing that. And because had it not been for his courageous move, the conversation we're having right now, it wouldn't have been possible. Not at all.
As I was reading, Mississippi John Hurt was born, like I said, 1863, way before B.B. King, Muddy Waters, any of them that had been born or had come along. And he was known. I read that his style. He played the acoustic guitar,
That's correct.
and I was just wondering, how did he? I mean, with very little education, where did he learn to play music?
My grandfather was self-taught. He told the story about his school teacher that used to date this man. His name Mr. Carson, and Mr. Carson would come down to visit, would stay with my grandmother and my grandfather over the weekend while he dated this lady, and he played this guitar. And when Mr. Carson was asleep, Daddy John would sneak his guitar in a secluded place and practice playing. And he learned, and he taught himself by ear to play after some time. And he surprised his mother one day when the man came over and he was asleep. And he was on the porch playing the guitar, and his mother came out thinking it was Mr. Carson playing, and found that he was playing. She was astounded, and so at this point, Daddy John asked for a guitar, and of course they didn't have the money to buy a guitar, and that was the local store owner who had a guitar for $5, and my grandmother saved enough money to purchase him the guitar for $5, and the rest is history.
Okay. So, as a young boy, he learned to play. I mean,
Yes,
who did he play for?
Oh gosh, I mean, he was the neighborhood entertainer for the whole community of Avalon. I remember very vividly as a child. On Sunday, I mean, that was everyone went to church on Sunday afternoon, and on Sunday afternoon after church, everybody would get out of their Sunday best, and there was this huge oak tree in our front yard, and people would come over, and Daddy John would play songs for the kids like chicken and gospel songs, and then after the kids were entertained, then the kids were sent off to play,
Hmm.
and the neighbors would come in and sit around with their chairs, and he would entertain the whole community. And he did he played at church plays, and at the school, the church, um, various people for bap- baptismals, and uh, all the locals around, both white and black.
All
He was
right.
entertained for that.
So, Don, do you have any comments tonight? I noticed you being awfully
Yeah, I
quiet.
can. He was I met him when I was really young, like 12 years old, and he did exactly what she's talking about doing. We would sit around and watch him, and he would play for us. Uh, he inspired a whole lot of us to want to be like him, basically, because he was mild mannered and very well spoken. What was different about him and his playing style and everybody else's style was that he picked out the song, the lyrics to the song. If you listen to his playing style, he plays and sings simultaneously. So his fingers are playing what his lips are saying in the song, and he carries the rhythm along with it. That's almost impossible to do as one guitar player, but he was able to learn how to do that with his thumb, carrying the bass and his other fingers carrying the rhythm at the same time. And we would sit around and watch him wanna, try to figure out how to do that because it was so fascinating. He would stop and take time to show us how to where to put your hand and whatever. But the most thing that he really was, he was a prophet and poet. That's what we called him because he sat down and spoke positive things on our lives. But boy, you're gonna be something one of these days, and you're gonna do this and that. And so those things stuck with the young men that sat around him, and we all had that in the back of our minds that if he said that we could be somebody, then we could because he told us, about the meager resources that he had growing up, and that we had a whole lot more going for us at the time where we were than he did when he was growing up. And he said, if I can be where I am, where they were flying mules and y'all got tractors, then I believe you can be whatever you want to be.
And he got discovered later in life, huh?
Yeah, he
Brit-
got discovered by the universities who came down to Mississippi. Back in that time, they were looking for artists, and they had a lot of people in the universities who were writing papers and doing documentaries because it was a popular thing going then to try to find out about Southern culture. And it was during that period of time that Southern culture was an interesting thing because the Europeans came over to America and showed people how important the Southern culture happened to be. Well, the people from the universities, like in New York and in Chicago and the bigger cities, were interested in finding out about that because they wanted to be able to be experts in that area, so to speak, like they commonly do. They'll come in and find the art form and take over that form, and if it appeals to the people from France or England or somewhere like that, the people in America want to be on top of that kind of thing so they can say they shared it with the world. And of course, John Hurt's playing style was not something they could share because they didn't know how to do it. So they had to come and get him and take pictures of him, do uh, forums with him, and have him to present himself so that they could study him and find out, how he managed to master that instrument without having any music to read. He wasn't looking at music. It came straight from up here when he would sit down and play. And so it was fascinating to most of the people who came and got him and took him out and started him to touring. And he actually toured quite extensively, as you can see from reading about his background.
Well, he was a great, you know, he's a great influencer when it comes to that acoustic guitar. But he's a name uh, that I mean I've never heard about.
Wow. Wow. It, I'm not surprised. I tell you the truth, Katie.
Mhm,
You know, I guess having been around my grandfather all of my life, and or growing up as a child, and when
mhm.
I came to Chicago, I mean, I had no idea, no idea, the impact that Debbie John had on the music world and the genre that he played. Period. And having wanted to work in an environment that was similar to my own because I wanted to give back as an educator, I chose to work in inner city Chicago. And one of the things that I knew and that was given to me, I wanted to give back. And I had an opportunity when I went to the elementary school in Money, Mississippi, and growing up in Avalon, where we had to go get up early in the morning to then there was a school near us, but we weren't allowed to go because we were black. So we had to go like 30 miles away. Money, Mississippi was a very long way to go to school, you know.
Mhm.
And uh, During my, I think I was fifth grade, there was this, they started this program for impoverished youth. If you had a
Mhm.
GPA of like maybe a 3.5, you had an opportunity. It was a program called Upward Bound. And Upward Bound,
Yeah,
um, so
you got to go stay on the college campus.
I had an opportunity
Yes,
during the
yes.
summer. I stayed on the college campus, and I went to school on Saturday and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday during the school year. And during the summer, I stayed on campus in the dorms, and we had an opportunity to go to various universities and go on field trips and all of that. Had it not been for that experience, I would have never gone to college.
Mhm.
That was, the only thing that we were exposed to going to work school is that we took home economics, and you could become somebody's cook or whatever the case may be. But it's never anything but having that experience,
I
giving
think
that
I,
lesson.
I think that Upward Bound program exposed us to a lot of the HBCUs.
Oh my goodness! I mean, it was a life changer for me. I was
Yes,
the first in my
yes.
family to finish college, and
Well, Mary, I mean, you're quite modest, but genetically you were gonna excel. John Hurt was that kind of a magnetic personality, of course, and you can see that.
well, thank you, Don. I can tell you one thing for sure. What Daddy John was, what he did, he did do for me, and I'm so thankful, so thankful. I didn't understand how my grandfather could be so loving and humble, coming from an environment like that. I just didn't. And when I tell you, I know he had human qualities like anybody else. But I tell you, I never, I never, ever heard this man ever raise his voice. And when we were get on his nerve, he would play "Sit down, little girl," or "Go away, little boy." I mean, he would never say it himself. But when I left Mississippi, I was one bitter human being.
You were what?
One bitter human
Uh-huh.
being. I was just so mad and just so angry. Just, I just, with the environment that's there and just how you could treat people so horribly. And my destiny was to, through education, was I'm going to change the world. Okay, I want to go back to people and teach children like myself because I know how that is. Okay,
I
and
want
my
to ask you. I want to ask you because you are an educator
yes,
and because you were teaching. How many history books in the I'm going to say because you taught in Chicago. How many history books in the Chicago public school system did you run across your grandfather's name?
quite a few, but the information was incorrect.
Okay. Okay.
The information was correct, and one of the experience that I had, which really just changed my life. It was 360. It was, I took my students on a field trip downtown Chicago because these kids on the west side of Chicago had never been out of their neighborhood, many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And going downtown was like a trip to Paris for you or I. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the House of Blues had a program for kids, and they to teach them the roots of the blues and to serve them lunch, and it was really an exciting trip for them. And so it gave the teachers an opportunity to do some exploring if they wanted to downtown Chicago, whatever. And I really wasn't enthused to do that. So I kind of like wandered around in the gift shop, and I wandered in the gift shop. When I got to the gift shop, I saw this mirror over the gift shop in the House of Blues, and I got closer to it because my grandfather had this image. I don't care where I see it; it could be a silhouette or whatever the case may be. I can identify my grandfather's image anywhere. If he the way he hold his head, his hat, or whatever the case may be, or just his body image as a whole. I don't care who tried to display it. I know that's Dead John. And I went up to this image, and they had Mississippi John Hurt, and I read it closely. He's a father of 14 children, and this is a whole bunch of stuff that was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not true. And me being a dummy, I'm like, "But that's wrong. That's
Okay.
that's so wrong." And I'm like, I want to speak to the manager. I said, you know that mirror outside that door? That information is incorrect. And he goes, okay, so this, and he said, this is a franchise. And I'm thinking, oh no, and I'd read things as a kid about my grandfather. I knew was incorrect. They would not identify his. It's like he came from a single parent household. He didn't. He had a father and a mother.
But when they said to you, you said they said to you, this is a franchise.
This is a franchise. Take that out with whoever started this franchise. So, and I
Well, who
decided,
started the franchise?
right. Well, the House of whoever started the House of Blues. He was saying
But
to me,
how can, well, I don't want to get into that today because I mean, to take a name and to take a name that belongs to someone that's, I mean, a real live person, that's like me taking Dunn Kincaide's name and starting a franchise, me starting one.
okay, but I understood what he was saying. He was saying to me, whoever put the franchisee, or
Yeah,
they made put those murals there. He didn't. He was just a person that worked at this establishment, and he didn't have anything to do with it.
right,
And I
right.
understood that. Well, I understood that, but it was, to me, it was incumbent upon me. I said, everything I read about my grandfather is incorrect. And I remember, as I said, I was at, I was listening to Toni Morrison, who said one time, she said, if there's a book you want to read and it hasn't been written yet,
Yeah.
then you must write it. And so it was for me to scream at people about how they had information incorrect. And, a lexicon or in history is his story. If I see
Right.
something that involves my history and I want somebody else to correct it for me, oh, that's not right. Then, and I have the background to do it. I know, I know the information about my grandfather. I don't hold anybody responsible for that when I misread something. As long
But
as
it has to be that way. I mean, I'm not trying to cut you off, but so many things in history have, especially in American history, have been changed and altered in a way where it does not come from the source directly from which it began in the first place. In John Hurt's case, like I said in the earlier thing that I said before, it was very difficult for him to fathom a black man having the kind of ability to sit down and play that type of guitar that no other person could play. That they were not playing at that time. He wasn't playing like somebody. He was playing a different kind of guitar that nobody else played, and now that should be brought out more than anything else. And so, the franchise part of it was that everybody wanted a piece of it. Everybody that heard it wanted a piece of it, and everybody that got a little bit about it and could play a little bit of it wanted to take credit for it and say that that it was them doing it. If you look at the blues things that's going on right now, um, they're not blues, and so I'm going to leave that there so we can do it in the future with some of the things that we're going to be talking about,
Right.
hopefully. But they don't even touch on the fact of where blues came from. Daddy Hurt, as you call him, took the blues and turned the language that we were learning how to speak into a communicative device. If you wanted from an educational perspective, we were able to talk to each other when nobody else understood what we were saying, music wise. And he is the one that he established that precedent where we could sit down. And if I wanted to coach you, Mary, I would sit down and come up with some words and put some little music licks to it. And the next thing you know, I was saying, baby, let me slide in your black door. Make me a pallet on your floor. And that's the language we were speaking back then. But
Yeah.
and then you would understand what I was saying, but the other people around us would not. And so that's what the blues is all about. It's not all about being sad. Everybody think the blues is, oh Lord, my woman done beat me up and she told me I'd go. It ain't about that. It was about a a secret coded language that only the heart could understand when
Yeah.
you were getting ready to deal with it. And so he tapped into that better than anybody else during his age, the age that he was coming through with the instrument. And the reason he played acoustic because they didn't have any other kind of guitars. They made those guitars back then basically because you couldn't afford to do anything else. And so he took what they had, what he could work with, and mastered it and made the art form.
Well, I appreciate you. I think you're exactly right. But I've since I started this venture of rediscovering my grandfather and introducing him to the world as a man, to the man to whom I knew, okay, and to who was uh, my father's father, okay. I felt incumbent of to put a face to this person, not just he was just a good guitar player. He was a profound, prolific man that raised
Hmm.
three strong African American children. He stood for that, and for him, uh, when they rediscovered him, and long after, in the battle I've had to regain my name. You think about this has been a mission because he does none of his children are living. My
I,
dad.
I wanted to ask you. We talk about your grandfather. Uh, uh, what about your father? Did he play music?
My father, as I said, was his eldest son,
Mm.
and my dad was my father was a harmonica player, and he was a
Okay.
harmonica player, and
Uh-huh.
he was so so much so very much much like Daddy John in the sense that he was an uneducated man, but he was self-taught. He was a self-taught mechanic. My daddy never bought a car. He built his cars.
Shut up.
He could fix anything, anything. Because he couldn't read and write, he took notes in his head. And his name was TC. That was his initial. That's all he
TC
was.
Hurt, huh?
TC Hurt.
Okay. I was just wondering because your grandfather was so. I mean, he when I when you read about his music, when you listen to his music, just like Doug was saying, there's a story in every song.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I look back on Daddy John's life, and I saw the things that he encountered as a man, and he still remained steadfast, and he had a smile on his face all the time. But to me, he actually lived his name. He lived his name. Here he is. When his father disappeared, he was believed
Mhm.
to be lynched. His dad went away when he was 4 years old, and
It's
never
what
returned.
now?
His father,
Uh huh.
Isaac Hurt, went away to work one day when he was 4 years old and never returned. And no one knew whatever happened to him, but it was assumed that he was lynched. And so his mother raised those 11 children alone. He has these two children, and my father, who was had a rare blood disease but was undiagnosed and was ill most of his life, all of my life that I knew Daddy, when I was growing up. Well,
Hmm.
when I was born, he was sick. He was unable to work, but he could. The fact that he could work with his hand, and all the people would bring their cars to him. Even well-known mechanics would bring their cars to him to repair.
Hmm. Hmm.
And his only daughter, Ida Mae, was killed before I was born. So she was killed very tragically. And
Hmm.
to see your two children die before you was horrific for him.
He was a
And to be
strong man, huh?
yes, yes, yes.
I guess that's maybe another reason he could express himself so much in his music. And
Well,
uh,
especially during that time of of everybody coming up. We didn't have all of the amenities we have right now. You know, you got all of the television and radio and telephones and everything now, but people had limited ways of entertaining themselves and actually occupying their time. Uh, a lot of people attribute the blues and jazz to the fact that people, when they were working, instead of feeling bad about what they were doing, to establish a rhythm in terms of the kind of work they were doing and keep it going, they would sing songs back and forth out in the cotton field, on the railroad track. You know, you could go down and hear about individuals who actually, as they were driving the stakes into in the railroad, they had a rhythm. They had a song they were singing, or whatever, and they had songs that they made up about almost that. Um, John Hurt made up songs about the Mississippi Delta, from Avalon all the way back to the Mississippi River. Is John Hurt's legacy, and that's where it came from because it was about the way people were being treated over there in terms of that area. And of course, right now, because of the things that he decided to rise up against that and not, not go out and burn down anything or whatever, but he in his own quiet way revolutionized everything that was going on in that area because they, they were not supposed to be able to make any real money because they were black folks. They weren't supposed to have no money. If you had some money, people could walk up on the street and ask you whose money is that, or who car is that you driving or whatever. Even up until quite a few years later. But John Hurt was able. He transcended that. He came out of that kind of harshness and
Um,
went to become a person that everybody wanted to see, wanted to hear. Even the white folks up in Carroll County, one of the most racist counties in Mississippi. There's a place up there where he used to go and sit in front of the store, and they have a, a commemorative plaque they placed there for him, even though they didn't want to give him credit for it. They put that plaque there because John Hurt used to play there, and that's what people would assemble at that
well,
store because of him.
well, I don't deny, but the thing that I want to stress most is
Mm-hmm.
that yeah, I know if I recognize it, if I recognize the inhumane treatment of African American, I understood the 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 kind of impact it had on me as a young African American. I know he had to, because I mean it was bad for me, and we're talking 4 generations later. Okay, it had to be difficult for him, but for me, I mean, if Daddy John had been the radical that I was, okay, the script would have been a whole different, totally
Mm-hmm.
different. I know he understood the diversities and the animosities and all of those things that attributed
Had
to him,
to,
but
had to.
the way he handled it gave me an appreciation and a different approach to um, life as a whole. Okay, um, my hatred and putting a blanket statement across um, all white people are bad, all white people are racist.
Mm-hmm.
If Daddy John had been so hard hearted and he was so like me, I wouldn't have had that opportunity. What to be able to meet people all across this nation, all races, all nationalities, all from various countries. I wouldn't have had that opportunity if Daddy John had been abrasive, if he had been um, the type of militant that I wanted him to be. Daddy John, don't you hear this? Say something. Why are you saying yes or to a kid that's that's 10 years old? Why are
Mm.
you saying that?
He
It's
was
yes or
humble.
no.
He was
You know,
humble.
yeah. Oh, oh, oh. It used to really just make me so angry. I'm like, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't do that.
And no, I think he was shrewd. He
You
may
think
have.
he was shrewd?
I think he was shrewd because the same one that she's talking about is the same man that told the white folks he didn't want them to pay him in no check. He
Oh,
told
I
them
didn't.
no, hold on. He told them in New York. He told them up here when they bought the University of Illinois that I want money because I don't trust y'all. So he was humble in one way and meek and mild because he knew when he was in Mississippi that in any way, if he rubbed somebody the wrong way and somebody got mad, look
Yeah,
at
he
what
could
they
be
did
gone.
to
He
him.
could disappear, couldn't he?
That's correct. And
Right.
he wouldn't show up and he knew how to navigate. That's why I say he transcended the kind of things that were going on and got out of that so that that's why his name is all over the place.
Well,
He's
and
more famous he's more
I
famous in
agree.
Europe than he is in America.
I agree, but I'm saying I needed that stability in him. Okay, I needed that. I would be a different person, not him.
Good. I
I
mean,
need.
that's what I said to you that you're genetically are part of him. So even though you're modest enough to sit there and and just absorb it and let it pass over, it's still going to be a part of you because you're part of John Hurt. And of course, you are still part of him up on the inside because you are in your own right going out waging the kind of campaign that needs to be done. Most other people would be railing holy hell about what's going on with his music right now. I'm sorry about that. Go ahead.
Well, no issues at all. But I do think uh, to, to, um, God said in His Word, too much is given, much is required. Okay, it is not enough for me to sit back and say, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, they did that John wrong, and they took this and they took that." Hey, as opposed to me talking about it so much, let me take back what I can while I can, and that's what I've done for the last quarter of a decade, or
Hmm.
quarter of a century. For the last 25 years, I've beaten that beaten path. I've taken back everything I possibly could, including my name. Do you know before 1996, um, I couldn't use my grandfather's name?
Of
We
course.
Oh,
couldn't use his.
we're gonna get to talking about that too. We're gonna get to talking about that too. We don't want to give out. We don't want to put all the eggs in one basket because there's so much to talk about. But I
Yeah,
do want to say, I
that's
do
what
want
I've
to.
been trying to do is not be kind of go do dips and dabs a little bit in moderation because you got three more parts to discuss quite a few things.
Yeah, there's so much. There is so much more to John Hurt than just 1 hour. Okay, so we don't want to. We don't want to. We don't want to put everything out here today. But your father was like a radio and a TV to the
Yeah.
people in his
Oh,
town.
he was. Oh my
You
God. It was.
know, because people would come to listen and people would come to watch. I mean, back then were there radios and TV stations?
Well, for we didn't have a TV. I don't know about
Okay,
anybody else.
Yeah,
so
that,
there
that was
he
a
he
radio.
was the entertainment, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was. I mean, that's all I can remember as a kid growing up. I mean, I don't. I mean, didn't everybody have a grandfather that played on under the shade tree on Sunday evening?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
we didn't have a grandfather that played music and sang, and the whole town would come around to hear
no,
him
I mean
sing.
that
Okay,
there was a black radio station back then. I don't know whether you have heard of it or not, but it was called WDIA out of Memphis.
Oh
and,
yeah.
and it
But
was the only station that really was operational that African Americans were, featured in and so on and so forth. It's actually the one that BB King came up through and all that. John Hurt was before those things.
right.
He was in the WC Handy group that
yeah.
that was inspired by his music. If you go to Memphis and go to Beale Street, where they have a statue at the front of Beale Street of Elvis Presley, they ought to take it down and put John Hurt statue up there. But they won't put that there because they what they want to do is the credit. Well, we get famous and they get rich. And basically that's what they did. They wanted to do with Mississippi Hurt was to make sure that they made the money and control the resources,
Mhm.
but that he actually was the one was the feature attraction, so to speak. And that's what we're going to be talking about probably throughout this whole thing. And I hope that you all will be able to highlight the fact that went on and it's still going on now.
It is. It is still going on right today. His music is his music is strong. Okay, they
Yeah, in Europe, if you go to Europe, they know him better in Europe, in the European countries than they do over here. They worship him in Europe.
what's in Don, since you're into music, why is it that black blues artists, not only blues, I should say R&B, black artists, period, why can they go overseas? They're here in the United States and they have a hard time getting recognized. They can go overseas and blow up.
Well, um, spiritually, if you go to the Bible, Jesus wasn't accepted in his own hometown.
Okay.
He did miracles everywhere else. When he got to his own hometown, people were saying, "Ain't that carpenter boy? We know he can't be doing." But that's spiritually.
Okay.
Realistically, though, America has a stigma that's attached to it, where whatever it is that we do as a people here, especially blues artists and R&B artists or whoever, if it's got people of color attached to it, then there's supposed to be no credibility that's assigned to it unless people give you They make it. They tell you they discovered you. I mean, I've had people tell me, I'm sitting there 50 years old, and this little 20-year-old kid telling me, well, we're going to discover you, man. I'm saying, okay, hurry up and do that for me and bring me a big check or something. But it happens like that. America, and plus the fact we have not had the material resources as a people. Up until when Daddy John, as he calls him, now we'll call him that throughout the segments. Um, Daddy John then went out. If you made $3, you had a lot of money,
Mm.
and
That's
so
true. That's
and
very
so
true.
so when you had a lot of people walking around down there that didn't have the resources to pay for stuff, they couldn't. If I go downtown on the Mag Mile right now and get ready to play, all I have to do is open my guitar case up and start playing, and people start standing around, and they out of habit they'll walk up and drop money in my guitar case. I swear they will do that. But our people didn't have those kind of resources to do that with, and they were not tourists. And even though when they were curious, but they gave what they could. Some of them brought food and wanted to wanted to feed you, and give you somewhere to stay. So all other favors they could give you, but they didn't have the material resources to support us that the other people in other countries have had. Therefore, the interest was different. And of course, other countries set the pace for America, for white America as well. And I hate to put it that way, but they do. The Versace and the Louis Vuitton and all that, they're not from here. They're from other countries. And of course, everybody people pay big money for them. But we have craftsmen over here that can work with leather and create stuff just as rare as the stuff they do. The prices are not as high if we produce those things, and that's probably part of the reason that the it's not held at high a value in this country as it is in other countries.
Well, it talked about him having a true art. He was a natural. He was a natural artist, and
Yes,
he just loved music.
He just he loved music and he loved
Yes,
people, and
he,
he was just so giving of himself, and he would stop. I don't care if anybody wanted to
it
learn.
said that I was reading this part that he was so giving of himself that he wasn't even interested in the money.
no,
I
No,
was like, wow, he didn't care about the money. Just let me sing. Just let me entertain. You
no.
know,
You
he
know, he
just,
wa- he had a need to take care of his family, but he was not to the point that, I'm not going to do because I'm not going to show you how to do this, or demonstrate how he did a certain chord, or whatever the case may be.
mhm.
He was that giving, you know. And I think, that is the part that I admire, having been on this road so long. And I mean, when you talk about a human being,
Mhm.
and you see this person because you're related to him, you have not seen this. When you have a person that I've never, all of my years, have ever heard anyone say one negative thing about Daddy John. I don't care where they came from or whatever. And for me to try to live up to that, it's tough. It really is. And when I having to do some of the things I had to do to maintain my grandfather's legacy, is, I have to take a tough stance. And they say, well, you're not like your grandfather. Yeah, I am like my grandfather in more ways than one. I play the strum of justice. Okay, I'll play that. Okay, that's my guitar. And I don't miss a note. I thumb that.
But
So, um, I have a tough um, path to travel to outlive this name, but I do my utmost, to represent him with the utmost dignity and respect that I possibly can. Because I know I'm very proud to do it, and everything that I've done and everything that I'm excited to share in this upcoming series and the other works that I'm doing to preserve his legacy, to share that, because he's definitely worthy to for African Americans, especially, to know the contribution that he made and others like him that are unrecognized today.
Well,
Well, it's quite admirable that you would take on such an awesome responsibility because you're actually um, coming coming against a well established wall of lies that have been told over the years about who did what with what, especially coming out of Mississippi. Because when it comes down to people being given credit for things that happened over there, how many history books are you going to go into and find them saying anything positive about somebody from Mississippi inventing or doing something other
Well,
than John Hurt?
I agree with you. Know what the beauty of it is? I can write. I can write too. I can write, and I have a memory,
okay.
and I
Yeah,
can
well,
quite well.
maybe in the future you'll have impact on that when you write. And of course, I'm talking about in the years that have have come before you, we're having to deal with that. You're having whole school systems that are adopting school books. Matter of fact, I did a study on it myself in 1978 about the content analysis of the textbooks and what kind of impact they had on the racial climate.
Well,
And
that's a whole different ballgame, because right now we are in a state right now where the education system is in trouble. When you think about taking history out of the school, you've taken fine arts out. You've taken, and now you want to take history out also. I mean, how?
yeah, of
Uh,
course they want to take history out because
heck,
we're asking them to put
Okay,
black
we
history
we
in.
getting we're getting off into another show. Okay,
Uh-huh.
we're gonna put a halt to this. Listen, there is a part two, there's a part three, and there's a part four.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
so today we just introduce you to Mississippi John Hurt, some of his trials and tribulations. Part two, we're going to introduce you to the music. We might not be able to play the music because the music is copywritten, and I don't have permission to play it.
But I
But,
do. I have the permission to do it.
but Mary Frances Hurt on her end can play some of the music. I can't play it. So part two, we're going to talk about the music, and we're going to talk about what is Mary Frances Hurt doing to preserve this great legacy.
I'm excited to share next time.
And oh no, no, and one other thing, part two, we also have to talk about how he got discovered because we didn't really bring that out. We got to really talk about how somebody went down in Mississippi and found Mississippi John Hurt and his acoustic guitar playing folk songs and the blues. Because somebody found it. They discovered that that man was sitting down there in Mississippi and they wanted to bring him out for the world to hear. So listen, you have been listening to Rhythm Flow Radio live stream right here on Facebook Live, Meta Facebook Live, YouTube, and Spreaker. Mary Frances Hurt and Professor Don Kincaid, I thank you so much
Thank you so much,
for
Katie.
being a part of today's show. And hey, as soon as we plan part two, honey, we're going to post it and you're going to know it. So until the next time, happy Thursday, everybody.
Good night.
Good
Yeah, in the
night.
meantime, just go to YouTube and pull up John Hurt and just, if you will, listen to some of his songs.
Right. They can go to YouTube and you can pull up the music. There's a lot of music out there. But we still be back for the part two. We're going to talk about who discovered him. We're going to talk about that music. And we're going to talk about how this legacy is being preserved. And there's a part three and there's a part four. Until then, I say good night. Bye, y'all.